Okay. All right. Let's bring in Hannah and Daniel. Let's get them all situated here. We'll bring them into the conversation. Hopefully, this works out. Hannah and Daniel, there you are. How are you, my dear? Hopefully, we have audio. No audio still. You guys have your audio on?
Can you hear us?
I can hear
How
you
about
now.
now?
There we go. Praise the Lord. All right.
Okay.
Before we get started with you guys, I want to just share with everybody because I'm being told the Facebook definitely only allows us to live stream for only a couple hours. So if you were listening on Facebook and it cuts off, you have to go to the YouTube, the Passion for Truth Ministries YouTube channel. That's where it is live streaming nonstop. And so if for whatever reason Facebook cuts us off, it's because they do have a limit and will be over at the Passion for Truth YouTube channel. Okay, it is your turn. Hannah and Daniel Karalash, my son-in-law and my daughter. It is so good to see you guys. How are you?
Doing well. Doing
Okay.
well.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, we're excited that you guys are here, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say. I know you got some wisdom, and I know Hannah is how far along are you now? 7 months?
7 months, 31 weeks. Yes.
She's 31 weeks pregnant with her very first, and so that's super exciting. We're glad, and you guys got a lot going on right now, don't you? In the middle of
Yeah,
not
we're
only
actually
being. Go ahead, Daniel. Tell us what you got going on.
well, besides being in the middle of pregnancy, we're actually in the middle of a move, so we're packing everything up and getting everything ready. We're also finishing the house here that we're remodeling, so we've got a lot on our hands.
Yeah, I know that. And my other daughter, Sierra, is there helping pack. They're coming and moving back to our neck of the woods, and we're excited about that. That is a ton of work. So thank you guys so much for taking a few minutes out of your time because I know you've got a million things going on. But we'll try to keep this short. But I really want people, as we begin the backside of this Foundation of Youth segment, I want them to understand from a young person's perspective that just came through the process of courtship and into married life. What does that look like? So we want to I've entitled this segment To Date or Not to Date, dating versus courtship. Like, what does this look like? And let's start with Daniel first. Daniel, talk to us before you met me, right? What were your beliefs about finding a spouse? And then once you found Hannah and we walked through that process of courtship, did your mind change on your values and the value of courtship versus what you see other young people doing is in dating? What's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of each, dating versus courtship? What say you?
Sure. So I didn't really know about courting growing up. I had a bit of a different perspective. As you know, um, I grew up in a very traditional home, a Russian family. We had a basic understanding that you don't know sex before marriage, and that you get to gradually escalate in getting to know the person, and then you really save the really intimate stuff after marriage. However, how that really looked like and the practice, all of that wasn't really outlined. And it was a bit more dating focused, meaning that you're jumping straight into a romantic relationship. So I think one of the great things that we did from the get go is that we sat down and we talked about what that would look like, what a relationship would look like, and what courting would look like versus dating. Uh, Courting has an intent, so you're actually going for a goal. That's one of the big differences when we talked about it. Dating, it kind of falls into a category that I like to refer to extended adolescence. This is not something that's just within that's recently with millennials, actually dates before then, but it's this idea that you are able to go through life, especially during your younger years, and do serious things without responsibility. So dating is that sort of thing where you're going into something very serious. It's a relationship with another person, but there's no firm commitment. So you're able to enjoy the pleasures of a relationship without having to commit to uh, working toward marriage, for example. So courting, it brings that focus as the goal of all this. The relationship or the courting process is all for that. Another thing, and I think Hannah could talk more about this as well, is the approach behind courting and dating. So dating, when you're just jumping in, you're going straight into romantic, lovey-dovey relationship things, and emotions are through the roof. When you're courting, you're actually trying to uh, rein back these emotions so you get to learn a person as a friend before you get to know them as a romantic partner. And I think that's super important because eventually all the sexual drama and the romantic part of a relationship, it can start to fade away, and what you're left with is whoever you married. So it could be a friend, or it could be just a person that engaged with sexual relationship with you. So what do you want? Do you really want to know that person as the best friend? And I think that's one of the biggest things that impacted our marriage, and we'll talk more about that too. But it's just the fact that we just enjoy each other's company.
Mhm. Yeah, it was pretty much one of the main things we wanted to start with, is just, as in any relationship, you want to know the person. And so one of our goals was just um was just creating that friendship to become best friends before we were involved romantically. And that often is really hard to do, for young, with when young love um is starting, is in dating. That's kind of where it starts, is romantically. And but for courtship, for us, I think that was one of the major things that we wanted to focus on, um, is just becoming friends, establishing a really good foundation, learning more about each other, and then kind of progressing forward from there.
So do you guys feel like that the courtship process, well, first of all, explain for those that are out there that don't know, because there's going to be teenagers, parents who are going to force their teenagers to watch this segment, right? There's no question about it. So what's the big deal with courts? Like, why can't I date? What's wrong with being alone with my girlfriend or my boyfriend? And like, man, it just sounds like a bunch of rules. And granted, courtship is different, and it's instituted or implemented, I should say, differently based on each child. But there's, I know for me, I have a whole perspective on this, but from you guys' perspective, what was the value that if you were talking to a teenager today, right now, who's 16, 17 years old, man, they just absolutely fully in love. Like, what did this courtship process look like for you guys, and how could that really make an impact into other people's lives? What would you say to them? Like, what did it look like? Because they're asking right now, what does this look like?
Sure, that's a great question. Uh, First of all, I just want to stress for any teenager watching this or a young adult that's looking into courting versus dating, you really have to be invested into this, and you have to know the rewards of this. When you have the goal in mind, and you know the value of it, then it's going to be a lot easier to make those sacrifices. If you don't court, I really think you're missing out. It's extremely helpful, and it's definitely superior, far superior to just regular dating. I think you get a much more deeper relationship, and you get to love the person on a higher level. For us, to break it down in the beginning, uh, it the very first step was to really understand what courting was. So you gave me a book to read. We learned about the differences a little bit. We discussed about these differences, and the first step was to figure out how are we going to keep things on a stable level where for a period of time we're just getting to know each other as a person, as if you're looking from a perspective, so you're looking as if you're a relative rather than a lover. So how is this person going to react when they're angry? What do they like? What did they not like? What are some perhaps disagreements, fundamental disagreements that you might have? All these type of things. It's essentially the uglies. You're starting with the uglies of the relationship because you're going to encounter them sooner or later. So it's just great to start with them. You're building a timeline. You're building a map. And once you get that understanding with your parents as well as with yourself, and I understand for some young people, perhaps the parents are not even on board with it. So you really have to take the responsibility into your own hands and in making sure you're following a commitment that is godly and holy. But for those people who do have godly parents that can guide them, that makes all the difference, where they can really help you because they give you an objective perspective, and they're not there to be your critic. They're there to be a cheerleader that's brutally honest. So I think that's just one first fundamental step, is get this plan outlined and start with the uglies.
Yeah.
I think another thing is courtship reflects really what God values in marriage, and or should reflect what God values in marriage, where you sit down, you read the Bible together, you really learn to understand what is important to God in marriage and before marriage. So I think that was another thing too.
So, one of the things that I see, the mistakes that young people make is because look, young people become old people, and then old people have young people, and old people teach young people the same thing they learned when they were young people, when they're old people were teaching them, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is that this whole dating concept is brand new, really on the earth scene. A courtship was the only way that people found a spouse, was through the concept of courtship. It's only been about 125 years, somewhere very close, not even 120 years, where dating was developed in the United States. It was invented in the United States, and dating really took the parents out of the picture. Where some of your grandparents that are listening might remember the parlor, right? You had a parlor inside your house, and the prospective young man would come in, sit at the parlor, and the parents would be there or in the other room. And it was the concept of family, and parents were very much involved. Today, parents are really not involved, hardly at all. They want to meet the young man, and then off they go on a date, and they're 14 years old. Like, how does this work? I can't even imagine my 14-year-old going to a movie with another 14-year-old. You know why? Because I was 14 once, and I know these young 14-year-olds are not 14 for sure. And I think really it's really important for us to stress that if we're going to do Bible things in Bible ways, it includes in finding a mate. Like, we need to look into the scriptures. How did they find? Now, I'm not advocating that dads go and pick out, online, hey, this son will be a great son-in-law, and I'm going to pick him for my daughter. No, that's not necessarily how it works. But I want to get into, before I kind of give a parent's perspective on this, I want to get into the details, the nitty-gritty of, like, what did you guys do? Like, what were the rules that your big bad father-in-law put before you? What were, I know you didn't like all the rules either. I wouldn't like them if I was in your position and your shoes, but, like, how did you guys court? Like, what did that look like? Did you guys get to talk all night on the phone? Like, were you hanging on each other, in the living room during a late night movie? Like, talk to us about what this looked like. Walk us through it, because parents have really no idea what it should look like.
Yeah, well, I know that one thing is that we were very limited physically, so we were not holding hands. We could only give side hugs, and we were not allowed to message each other privately or talk on the phone privately. But we would be able to communicate, because at the time we lived in different states, and so we really didn't get to see each other, and we needed a way to communicate. And so we were still doing that through, like, a group chat with some close friends and some family, and there were times where it was hard, you know, because we wanted to get closer, but we also both wanted that accountability, and we cared to respect our parents and what they put in front of us, even if, you know, there were moments where it was hard and we didn't really want that. But we also knew that it was respectful to the father to respect our parents and what they put in place for us. Some other things, can you think of some other things maybe that, um,
Well, I just want to
because
feed off of that a little bit. In no other aspect of life would we ever want to do something for the first time without the guide of an experienced person. Like, would you want to fly a plane without an experienced person teaching you, or drive a car, or cut with a handsaw, whatever it may be, especially if the stakes are high? You absolutely don't want to do something without an experienced person guiding you. So yeah, there's some times when we really wanted to get close, but we also knew that the moment we do anything, hold hands, we get really close, emotions go through the roof, especially if you're not familiar with these type of things, and your mind goes goes somewhere else for a moment. So we actually needed that sort of accountability and help in those times. We depended sometimes on an objective perspective, somebody who was outside of uh, this emotion that was circulating, or that was reverberating between us.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had to definitely stay physically apart, but we also had to keep our mind focused on specific goals. So we're building a family. We're not, you know, we're not just dating, we're building a family together. So how is that going to look like? What kind of financial goals are we going to look at? What sort of career goals are we looking at? How are we going to handle things like difficult questions about kids, raising kids, things like that? So all of that was part of the courting process that we had to discuss, plan, and also get input from parents on.
So let's back up for just a second, because I know we could talk about this for so long, and I know we're going to run out of time. But let's talk about this for a second. One of the questions I know that young people will definitely be asking is like, okay, wait a minute, you're telling me that I can't talk to this person on the phone by myself? How am I supposed to ever know who the right one is if I don't get to know people? And first, I want to hear your answer from your perspective, and then I'm going to give my answer as both a Bible teacher and a minister and a dad. But what say you? Like, how are you supposed to find the right person if you can't even talk to them?
Well, so we did get to talk, but it was always in a group setting. And I would say objectively, if you really want to know somebody better, it's always better in a group setting, because there's less at stake. There's more people interacting, especially if they don't know you're on to them. That would be even better. But of course, in a group setting, I think that we do have to interact in ways that we don't usually aren't usually accustomed to. If we're like, for example, if your sister is part of the group and she says something, and it irritates you, and you respond back, and suddenly that's out there. Well, that's actually good to know. These type of things are helpful, and you get to know a person through a deeper way, because you're always trying to kind of put your best foot forward, especially if you're one-on-one with a person, and you're never trying to address certain things. In a group setting, people can point certain things out. Why did you say this? Or perhaps maybe you guys can talk about this. So there are advantages to that, and then you will get to a state where you can discuss the more intimate things one-on-one. So courting doesn't just end in that state. It just begins in that state, and that's most of the courting process.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Courting is a process, and I love what Dr. RJ said is like when kids do things right, If the 9 o'clock is the cutoff time and that's their curfew, and they do really good at that, then they should be extended to 9:30, and give them something for doing what's right. And I think in the courtship process, it's all about trust. Let's just be real for just a moment, right? God made men and women differently and with passions, and it's supposed to lead towards sexual intimacy, period. I mean, we're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. So the entire process of how he created us chemically and emotionally is to be attracted to the opposite sex and then to do something about it. And unfortunately, you have an entire world that is built around sex, and it's built around the opposite sex. And matter of fact, there's too many different kinds of sexes now to even talk about, but there used to be only two. And what we're trying to do is on the unfortunate part is kids are being sexualized at a young age. So by the time, parents think it's cute, when their 9-year-old is playing with another 9-year-old boy and, oh, look, they're so cute. They like each other. And then they're surprised by 14 when they find that their daughter has been violated by this boy and she was okay with it, at a sleepover. Because the parents aren't thinking through the process that this is about protection and about doing what Solomon says, not awakening love before it's time. When you awaken love, it's designed to be awake, man. It's designed. And so you got 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are awakening love, and they cannot control themselves. And it's because they're not meant to necessarily be controlled. It's supposed to be inside of a controlled environment called marriage, right? And so courtship is designed in my household for you parents out there. Our rules are real simple. You're not bringing a boy home. You're not talking to a boy until we're darn near close to 20 years old. When you're 19 or 20, why? You might say, holy cow, it's crazy. Like you're a control freak. No, I love my children. That's why. And I know that they're not ready to get married before then. So if my children begin to bring home or start talking about this opposite sex thing before they're ready to take on a household of their own, what's going to happen is their whole life will revolve around the opposite sex. It's cute guys here and it's this, that, and the other. And I want to go visit this and do this and call him. And then it just always evolves, and in most cases devolves into the lowest form of humanity. So one of the things that courtship does is it creates this tunnel vision that says, we're going to focus on serving God. We're going to focus on schooling. We're going to focus on this, that, and the other until the time where we are, quote, of age. And so I believe from a dad's perspective on this, how does my children, how are we going to know who is the right one? Well, it's very simple. How do I know what God wants me to do tomorrow? I focus on him today, and tomorrow takes care of itself. You see, it's absolutely amazing. And I know Hannah and Daniel, you guys will agree with me. And Daniel, you've done a lot of ministry yourself. And Hannah's grown up in Passion for Truth and ministry. She's seen this. But we trust God with everything under the sun. But when it comes to finding a mate, it's God, I'll see you at the altar, right? Like, I appreciate you, but like, I got it from here. I'll take it from here. I'll see you at the altar. And that's typically how it works. And then they walk into marriage defiled, unclean. And I love this example that I gave you guys. I'll give it now for our guests, and viewers, but everybody's given a rose. Remember this example, right? So, and I didn't make up this example. I got this from somebody else 30 years ago, but everyone has a rose. And when you get to holding hands with this guy, you give a petal off that rose to this person. You kiss this person, you give a petal of the rose to this person. And by the time most people get to the altar, they've got nothing. They don't have anything but a thorny stem, a stem full of thorns. There's no flower petals on it at all because they gave it away to everyone. So although ours could be talked about with courtship, the reality is what we're trying to do, Hannah and Daniel, right, is to get to the altar with all of the petals on the rose so that you are experiencing marriage with your partner with unadulterated, 100% the perfume of roses all over your bed, and you get to enjoy one another from the beginning to the end, knowing that no one else has taken a sip from that. And it's incredible how you will just know when you're of age, when you meet the right person, you just know. And so all you parents out there that think, oh, that's crazy. Did you not know when you met your spouse that was the one? I knew almost instantly. Matter of fact, I made the mistake of telling Cheryl 2 months into our dating that I was going to marry her, and it almost scared her off because she wasn't ready for that. So anyway, I'll give you guys the last word, Hannah and Daniel. Last word, please, on courtship versus dating. We're definitely going to do another segment in the future for this. Tell us, give us some last minute advice to some young people that might be out there that are listening right now, and they like somebody. What would you tell them? Is it worth it to explore the concept of courtship? Talk to them for a second before we close out.
Sure. So, yeah, for that person that you are looking at, do you really want to channel all your love toward them? Because that's what we're doing there, essentially, like to what you explained. We're building a channel. Emotion is so powerful that it's like floodgates that are bursting open. So you want to be able to channel all of that love into one person, contain that in that person. Everything now that we do together is special for us. So holding hands is not simply holding hands for us. We worked hard for something like that, or a simple hug. We enjoy these things, or a kiss. It's so special for us. Over a year into our marriage, and even little things have so much value, because these are things that we share exclusively with one another, and we have worked hard for another. It costs us something, and we're glad, we're proud of these things. That's something that you can have as a young person as well, and it is the more mature way to go about it. You're building a family with a deep, intimate connection with your partner that has a foundation, that has a goal, and a friendship, most importantly.
Yeah, and you're ultimately building that foundation upon the Heavenly Father, because, if you want your marriage, you should want your marriage to be revolved around the Father, and starting out your relationship revolved around that. God's really going to bless you through that. So I would just say maintain your relationship with the Father first and foremost, and let Him guide you through the process, and let Him help you learn how to understand these things, because it is new, and we're all navigating it together. And so I think that is one of the most important things, is just maintain your relationship with the Lord, and work through that together. So.
Amen. And lastly, parents, I think what makes courtship work is that in this entire process, or this whole segment of Foundation of Youth that we've been talking for a couple hours now, is that when parents are involved with your life and you have a relationship with your parents and with your kids, what happens is the kids respect you. Like they know that you have their best interest at heart. And so it's easier for them to follow rules of courtship, because they've seen the benefit of following your Torah for decades. And I think the credibility, if we had not established relationship with Hannah and really put that concrete in her of the value of doing things according to the scriptures, and seeing that mom and dad are not always right, but they're mostly right. And don't say anything if you disagree with that. Okay. But, we'll pretend that you agree. But when we have a relationship with our kids, then moving them through the process of courtship just becomes a whole lot easier, because they want to serve God. They want to have the best relationship possible. And so do we. So Hannah, Daniel, thank you so much for spending time on our program, and we'll definitely have you on, and I'll see you guys in a few days.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been good.
All right. Shalom, you guys. All right. Well, when we come back, we will be visiting with Nathan Harmon, who is today's public school's most sought after public speaker, talking to kids by the tens of thousands all across the country. We'll be right back.